So I said, who's the white guy? I'm digging this Jimmy Iovine. And he said, no, Eminem called directly for 50. And he said,
that's his guy.
He said, I can't do it if I can't bring 50 up.
But that's his guy.
Right? And I'm like, that's when I start saying crazy stuff, because I look and I go, oh, that's your big homie, right? And so he imaged himself after a gay painter. Your big homie want to look like a gay painter.
What are we talking about here?
We're talking about Basquiat. He wants to look like a gay painter.
Oh my God, I think I know where we're going with
So
this.
now look, what I'm saying to you is, look, when you start looking at, that's not mine, that's theirs, their Harper, right? But when you look at,
man, things just got wild between 50 Cent and Jim Jones. What started as a casual chat turned into a full-on rap earthquake. It kicked off when Jim pulled up to Fat Joe and Jadakiss's podcast, and instead of giving flowers to the legends like Nas, he decided to talk crazy. Jim straight up claimed he's a better rapper than Nas, and said he's done more for the culture than Nas ever could. That's not confidence, that's a lyrical suicide note. People couldn't believe it. Jim looked dead serious too. No smiles, no jokes, just pure pride oozing out. Especially wild considering Nas is someone he grew up admiring. The internet lit up instantly, and of course, 50 Cent caught wind of it. And you already know 50. He never lets a single thing slide. He hopped online and started clowning Jim in classic 50 fashion, throwing shade that could slice through glass. He joked about Jim's obsession with Gucci stores, saying Jimmy be in there like, we Gucci, boo, thinking he's rewriting hip-hop history. But this wasn't playful teasing. 50's tone was surgical. He made it crystal clear he saw right through Jim's act. To 50, this wasn't confidence. It was a puppet show. And rumor had it that the strings were being pulled by none other than Jay-Z himself.
he was watching them be that, like Mace be that and Camp be that, and looked at, and it was finally, he had one.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked, and I knew, I just took the shot, Murder, to see, because I wasn't sure he was going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, we like Jimmy better than you anyway, Cam. Then you got to watch and see how he responds. And then when you see, he like, oh, he really like that. Hey, give me this, give me Jimmy. Yeah, tell him we want him. We want you at the show, Jimmy. Yeah, but that was one of those things I just threw it out and see what. And then when he bit to it, because it was like he was having a moment that not sure that was going to ever happen again at that point. And then he's going, for them, they had records that were, look, I always said it's a certain artist, I go, damn, when is he going to have his moment? Like, Fat.
That's when things went from funny to strategic. 50 wasn't just roasting for laughs. He was calling out what he believed was an industry setup. He hinted that Jay might be using Jim as a pawn in some behind-the-scenes game to reignite that old Nas rivalry. Crazy, right? Especially since Jim used to clown Jay back in the day, beefing with Rockefeller and talking wild in interviews. Now suddenly he's riding for Jay like they've been best friends forever? That switch-up doesn't smell right at all. 50 even said this felt like one of those throw it out there and see who bites moves. And Jim bit hard, like a man starving for headlines. You could tell Jim was loving the attention, acting like the spotlight was finally back where it belonged, on him. But real fans knew this wasn't new energy. This tension had been bubbling quietly for years. When Fat Joe mentioned that some younger fans online were comparing Jim Jones to Nas, Jim could have easily played it cool. He could have shown respect, maybe checked the younger crowd with some wisdom. But nope, he laughed and said, these new kids don't even know Nas. Then doubled down, claiming his own influence is way bigger. You could literally see Jada's soul leave his body when he heard it. That man was done. Jim started flexing about his fashion influence, saying the new generation learned their style from him. The belts, the Harlem swagger, the Dipset drip. He tried to frame it like he's the new idol of the era, replacing Nas for the youth. And if he had stopped there, maybe folks would have brushed it off. But Jim went all in, talking stats, streaming numbers, Billboard entries, like charts defying greatness. That's when fans destroyed him with receipts. They pulled up data, Side-by-side comparisons, proving Nas's legacy isn't even in the same galaxy. Nas got 27 Billboard entries and multiple #1 albums while Jim barely scratched the surface. The internet cooked him alive. It wasn't just a flop, it was a public meltdown. Nas didn't even have to respond. His silence said it all. Legends don't argue numbers with students, and that's when 50 stepped in, ready to turn the situation into something way bigger than a rap debate. He saw the play, and to him, Jim wasn't acting on his own. He was being played like a piece on Jay's chessboard. The crazy part is, this beef didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's been simmering for decades. Long before that podcast clip went viral, Nas and Dipset had bad blood. Back in the early 2000s, Nas threw shade at Cam'ron's Come Home With Me album, basically calling it trash. That diss set off Harlem versus Queens, Pride versus Legacy. Cam fired back over Nas's own Hate Me Now beat, and the whole thing exploded into a full-blown war. Jim Jones was right there on the sidelines, hyping it up. He wasn't the main sniper, but he played his position, loyal to Cam, ready to ride whenever the team moved. For years, they threw shots in interviews, dropped slick lines in songs, and made sure that Harlem energy stayed alive. But then, time started changing things. As Dipset's star faded a bit, Jim began pivoting, slow and quiet, distancing himself from the old beef and moving toward new alliances. That's when people started noticing him creeping into Jay-Z's orbit. And that move had everyone scratching their heads. See, Jim and Jay had serious issues back in the day. They weren't frenemies, they were rivals. Jay used to clown Jim publicly, and Jim clapped back harder, calling him out for being soft and not connected to the streets. The breaking point came when Jay refused to make Cam'ron vice president of Rockefeller. That decision cracked the whole Harlem Rock relationship in half. Jim took it personally. He backed Cam and went at Jay full throttle. There was real heat, not just rap talk. He even got into a physical altercation with one of Jay's close friends inside a Louis Vuitton store in Manhattan around 2008. Yeah, it got that serious. He pled guilty to misdemeanor assault the next year. That's how deep it ran. This wasn't music industry beef, it was personal. So now, fast forward to the present, and suddenly Jim's sitting on podcasts defending Jay's legacy while trying to discredit Nas. People couldn't make sense of it. The man who once declared war on Jay is now cozying up to him like they've been tight since day one. The timeline looks sketchy, and that's exactly why 50 called it out, loud and clear. To 50, this wasn't growth, this was strategy. He saw a man rewriting his own story, trying to make himself look like the hero of a chapter he barely belonged in. And when Jim started positioning himself as the face of New York hip-hop for this new generation, 50 was already 2 steps ahead, watching the moves like a chess grandmaster. The truth is, Jim wasn't the one carrying Harlem alone.
Jimmy was not a rapper then.
Right.
He was your man, like on the side, like on the side, just he was not a rapper at all.
Right.
So when Ballin' took place, and I'm looking and I'm going, oh, he having a moment. That's the Lloyd Banks. It's Lloyd Banks.
This club, Jimmy popping all that bullshit. I be seeing Jimmy talking about, we Gucci boo boo. He in the Gucci store. Talking about, we Gucci boo boo. The Black King niggas they was going fuck you up. Jimmy, they was like, Marita Monero.
Dipset had their moment. No one can deny that. Ballin' was a hit, an anthem even. But comparing that to what Nas did for culture, that's like comparing street fame to global respect. Nas didn't need gimmicks or designer belts to make history. He is history. From Illmatic to Stillmatic, he shaped the blueprint of lyricism. Even Jada's face during that podcast said it all. He didn't need to interrupt or argue. You could see in his eyes he knew Jim was tripping. The room felt heavy, like everyone just watched someone step way out of line but didn't want to say it out loud. Because deep down, everyone knows Nas doesn't need to prove his greatness with numbers or viral moments. And yet, Jim couldn't stop. He doubled down again, making it sound like Nas needed to thank him for the attention. He bragged, I made Nas go viral. That's never happened for him before. The audacity. Sure, Jim's name was trending, but it wasn't for bars, it was for drama. The same kind of drama that's been haunting his career for years. And through all that chaos, 50 watched quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike. Because if there's one thing 50 Cent does better than anyone, it's turning someone's clout chase into a public autopsy. He's not just commenting, he's exposing. Every move Jim made was fuel for 50's next post, next meme, next jab. And trust, when 50 aims, he doesn't miss. The stage was set. Old beefs reignited, alliances flipped, and reputations on the line. Harlem, Queens, and Brooklyn were back in the same storm again. Only this time, it wasn't about records. It was about loyalty, pride, and the kind of respect you can't buy in Gucci. By this point, things were looking real shaky for Jim Jones. Every time he opened his mouth about Nas, fans came harder, receipts came faster, and the memes got nastier. He tried standing tall, saying he's more active than Nas in 2025, claiming he's the one keeping that New York sound alive. But come on, Nas been dropping King's Disease, Magic, and killing verses with Hit Boy like it's 1996 all over again. Jim's words weren't landing like punches, they were bouncing back like echoes. That's when 50 Cent started turning up the heat. He didn't just throw jokes, he went surgical again, calling Jim a puppet in designer clothes. To 50, it was clear Jay-Z was the man behind the curtain, letting Jim do all the talking while he sat back untouched. And honestly, that theory had fans buzzing. Think about it. Jay's got a long history of playing the game quietly. He moves like a chess master, letting others make noise while he reaps the rewards. 50 said it straight. Jay don't get his hands dirty, that he lets somebody else swing the bat. And now, in 50's eyes, Jim was the one swinging. People started connecting dots. Jay and Nas have always had that old rivalry, a Cold War that never fully ended. Sure, they squashed it publicly, but behind the scenes, that tension stayed alive in whispers. So when Jim suddenly started talking down on Nas right after signing that Roc Nation deal, yeah, it looked way too convenient. 50 called it what it was, a setup disguised as a statement. He said Jay might be trying to stir the pot, using Jim to chip away at Nas's legacy without taking any public heat. That's classic Jay. Power moves without fingerprints. And Jim, he was eating it up, thinking he was calling shots when really, he might have just been the middleman in someone else's playbook. Then 50 reminded everyone, this isn't the first time Jim let someone else pull his strings. Back in the G-Unit versus Dipset days, there was a moment that told the whole story. During the height of the beef, 50 invited Jim to a G-Unit event, and fans thought maybe a big collaboration was about to drop. But nope, 50 had other plans. He brought Jim on stage, not to partner up, but to prove a point. He basically showed the whole industry that Jim would do anything for attention. No contracts, no deals, just spotlight. 50 stood there smirking like a chess king who just trapped a pawn while Jim soaked in the lights, not realizing he'd been checkmated in front of the world. That's when 50 lost all respect for him, not because of the beef, but because of the lack of code. In 50's world, loyalty means everything. You ride for your crew, you stand on your word, you don't switch sides when the weather changes. And in his eyes, Jim's loyalty was made of smoke. It disappeared as soon as the pressure hit. Now, with Jim aligning with Jay-Z, 50 saw history repeating itself. The man who once fought Jay in stores and studios was suddenly defending him online, dissing Nas and trying to act like the king of New York. It didn't add up. To 50, this was personal. Jay was the same dude who tried to block him from shining years back, and now he was watching Jim play the messenger for that same man. It wasn't just about rap anymore. This was power, politics, and pride. Three things 50 never mixes lightly. He knows how the industry moves, and he's seen how fast loyalty can be bought. That's why he doesn't flinch when calling things out publicly, because deep down, 50's not just trolling. He's teaching a lesson about how fast fake alliances crumble when the truth comes out. So now the streets were talking. Was Jim acting from his own ego, or was he just another piece in Jay's silent strategy? Either way, the damage was done. The Nas disrespect had turned into a full-blown conspiracy, and everyone wanted to know who was really pulling the strings. After that, things started spiraling fast. The second Jim's Roc Nation deal hit the internet. The energy in the room shifted. Heavy. Fans could feel it. It wasn't just another business move. It was a signal that Jim had officially crossed sides. 50 knew it right away. He could smell betrayal a mile away. Because when it comes to loyalty, 50 doesn't play. He even broke down how personal this all got. Remember that Super Bowl halftime show a few years back? The one that had Dr. Dre, Snoop, Eminem, Kendrick, and 50 himself? Well, 50 dropped a bomb about what happened behind the scenes. He said Jay-Z and Roc Nation were part of putting that show together. But when the first ad came out, guess who was missing? 50 Cent. He said, I wasn't in the ad because Jay-Z and them were putting it together. I think they still harbor some energy toward me. Then came the wild twist. Eminem was the one who stepped up for him. 50 explained that M personally called Jay and told him straight up, if 50 isn't performing, I'm not performing either. That's real loyalty. That's what hit different for 50. While M stood tall for him, Jay was out there quietly cutting him out. That's why he looks at people like Jim sideways. To him, Jim represents everything fake about the game, switching teams, chasing relevance, and acting loyal only when the camera's on. Not long after that Super Bowl drama, Jim started taking slick shots at Nas again. Coincidence? 50 didn't think so for a second. He said it loud. Jay was stirring the pot from behind the curtain, reigniting that old Queensbridge versus Rock rivalry without ever saying a word. Jay doesn't swing, he sends others to do it, and then collects the win while staying spotless. That's power politics at its finest, and it's the kind of move 50's been calling out for years. So when Jim started echoing that same anti-Nas talk, it looked like he was running Jay's playbook, word for word. And the internet noticed. People started digging up old clips where Jim praised Nas, calling him one of the greatest ever and crediting him for inspiring his hustle. Those same videos blew up again, turning Jim's new words into proof that he'd flip faster than a coin. And while Jim was out here chasing headlines, Nas was doing what legends do, staying silent, staying sharp, and stacking wins. The man's got Grammys, timeless albums, and a legacy that doesn't shake no matter who's trending. That silence from Nas, it wasn't weakness, it was power. He didn't need to clap back. He's been the benchmark. Meanwhile, 50 turned the whole thing into a spectacle. He hit Instagram like a man grabbing popcorn, dropping memes, old interviews, and captions that hit harder than diss tracks. He even called Jim the industry's favorite puppet, saying Jay was pulling his strings while he danced for attention. And the wild part, 50 wasn't trolling for clout. He meant every word. He's been warning the game for years about how Jay moves, quiet, strategic, and always in control. 50 says straight up that Jay never gets his hands dirty. He builds a clean image while using other people to handle the messy parts. And Jim, well, he was looking like the latest example. Fans were torn. Some said 50 was just being petty. Others said he was exposing the truth that everyone else was too scared to admit. Either way, the drama was alive, and every move Jim made seemed to prove 50's point even more. By now, the tension was thicker than Harlem summer air. The whole culture was tuned in, watching this triangle of power, 50, Jay, and Jim, play out like a chess match under a spotlight. Every post, every quote, every headline felt like a new move on the board. But the craziest part? Nas was still silent. No reaction, no statement. Just quiet dominance while the other two fought for camera time. And 50, he was eating it up like a man watching his favorite rerun. He stayed on Instagram throwing darts wrapped in humor. One day he'd drop an old clip of Jim talking sweet about Nas, and the next he'd clown him for running back to Jay like a desperate free agent. He even captioned one post, "These dudes change teams more than ball players." The internet lost it. But underneath the jokes there was real truth. 50 saw a pattern. To him, Jim wasn't standing for anything except survival. Every move Jim made screamed desperation, chasing relevance through controversy, jumping camps when one side got cold, and when whispers started spreading that Rock Nation's PR team might have pushed Jim to stir up the Nas talk for buzz, that's when things really got wild. See, in the industry, drama equals clicks, and nobody knows how to turn chaos into currency better than Jay-Z. If 50's theory was right, Jim wasn't a mastermind. He was a pawn moving exactly how Jay wanted him to. The fans started calling it the Rock puppet play, saying Jay was flipping old rivalries into new narratives while staying clean behind the scenes. Then 50 took it further. He started leaking old stories about Jim, begging for features, chasing meetings with big names, and getting curved. Every new post stripped a little more off Jim's Harlem armor, showing a man trying too hard to stay in rooms that barely wanted him there. It was brutal, but 50 didn't hold back. To him, truth hurts, and sometimes it's gotta sting loud. At this point, the internet had split into sides. Some people felt 50 was being too harsh, calling him petty, even obsessive. Others said he was doing the Lord's work.
Look, Jay-Z and them was putting it together. Mm-hmm. So I think they still harbor some energy towards me.
You think you were purposely left out of the ad?
No.
Okay.
I don't think. I think that they were saying the NFL had some issues with me that I don't know what those issues are. Like, what is the issue? You see what I'm saying? Like, and I with M, because like with Nori he had communication. He said, yeah, I talked to the big homie. He said, so Jay, he was telling me
You know, the white boy wouldn't do the truth without 50.
I hit the homie, the big homie Jay-Z, right? And I told him to come pull up on me. And he pulled up on me and he said, the white guy called for 50 Cent.
Pulling back the curtain on how the industry really moves. But one thing was clear, Jim's image was starting to crack. The tough, loyal Harlem soldier look started fading into something else. A man scrambling for position in a game run by people who don't play fair. Meanwhile, Nas kept his silence like a boss. He was still dropping albums that felt like time capsules, working with Hit Boy and proving that consistency beats controversy every time. His name was all over timelines, not because of clout, but because people remembered. This is the man who built the foundation everyone else stands on. Jim tried flipping the narrative, doing interviews saying, I'm still here, 2025, and they talking about me. He tried to make it sound like the drama was all part of his strategy, but people weren't buying it. They saw through the PR polish. This wasn't control, it was chaos dressed in confidence. And through it all, 50 stayed cool, patient, calculating, waiting for the next slip up. He knows the game better than most. He's been the villain, the target, the headline, but he's also the one who always ends up being right when the smoke clears. So now the question was no longer if Jim was being used, it was how deep he was in. Because once you start dancing for power in this game, you better know who's playing the music. And if 50's theory was true, then Jim wasn't just moving wrong. He was moving for someone else entirely. By the time the smoke cleared, this wasn't just about rap anymore. It was about respect, legacy, and how far someone will go just to stay relevant. Jim Jones found himself in the center of a storm that he started but couldn't control. And 50 Cent, he stood back, cool as ice, watching every move play out like a script he already read. Jim kept talking, saying things like, Nas has never been this viral ever. I made that happen. He tried to twist the backlash into a win, like he was the reason people were talking about Nas again. But everyone knew that wasn't clout. That was chaos. Sure, he went viral, but not for bars, not for music, just for drama. And that kind of fame burns out quick. The irony? The last time Nas was dragged into a circus like this was back in 2007, during the peak of the G-Unit versus Dipset wars. That's when Jim really showed the world what he was made of. He pulled up at a G-Unit event after 50 invited him, and people thought, yo, maybe 50's about to sign Jim, this could be huge. But nope, 50 had other plans. He brought Jim out just to prove how easy it was to move him. No contract, no deal, just a flex. That moment burned itself into hip-hop history. Jim stood on stage like a pawn, while 50 smiled like the king who just trapped him. From that day forward, 50 saw Jim as weak, a man who'd do anything for a few minutes of spotlight. And years later, nothing's changed. Now that same pattern's repeating. 50 and Jay-Z have been playing a quiet chess match for years, both powerful, both smart, and both knowing exactly how to hit where it hurts. So when Jim ran back to Jay for a career boost, that was it. He officially crossed enemy lines. 50 didn't even need a track to respond. He hit social media instead. Clips, memes, captions, all cutting deep. He called Jim the industry's favorite puppet and hinted that Jay was pulling his strings to reignite that old Nas rivalry. Fans couldn't stop talking. Was Jay using Jim as a smokescreen to chip away at Nas's respect while keeping his own image clean? If so, it's genius and ruthless. That's Jay's signature move. Control the board, stay spotless, and let others handle the mess. 50's seen that play 100 times, from the Biggie comparisons to how Jay froze out Dame Dash and kept Cameron from shining too bright. He's been mastering silent dominance his whole career. But here's what separates 50 from them: loyalty. When Jay tried to block 50 from that Super Bowl lineup, it was Eminem who stood up, no hesitation. He told Jay straight, if 50's out, I'm out too. That's what real loyalty looks like. No politics, no fear, just respect between brothers. And that's exactly why 50 still rides for M always. Jim, on the other hand, seems allergic to loyalty. Every few years, he flips sides, switches crews, and rewrites his alliances depending on who's popping. And that's the problem. No matter how loud he talks or how many designer fits he rocks, people see through it now. He's chasing headlines while legends like Nas are building history. Because when the hype fades, only one thing sticks: respect. Streams die out, trends vanish, and clout burns quick. But real legacy? that lives forever. Nas doesn't have to prove his worth. His work is proof. He built the very stage that these new voices are standing on, and no amount of social media noise can erase that. 50 made it clear. This whole saga isn't about rap beef, it's about values. Who stands for something real, and who bends whenever the industry wind blows? He's not just trolling, he's exposing. So here we are, three titans in their own lanes, caught in a new age war that's part pride, part politics, and all entertainment. Jim's out here fighting for relevance. Jay's pulling strings in silence, and 50's playing the watchdog, calling out every move with precision. Meanwhile, Nas, he's somewhere in the studio, unbothered, still shaping the future like the legend he is. And now it's on you. Whose side are you riding with in this chaos? Team 50, the truth teller who never bites his tongue? Team Nas, the quiet king whose legacy speaks louder than any diss? Or Team Jim, the underdog who swears he's just standing on business? Drop your take in the comments, hit that like button if you're locked in with the story, and don't forget to subscribe, because this saga's far from over and you won't want to miss what's coming next.